Welcome back to my Mental Health and Crime channel. My name is Huda London. Please like, share, and subscribe. This is for entertainment purpose only. Brian Kohlberger, who's accused for the murders of Xana Kernodle, Ethan Chapin, Madison Morgan, and Kaylee Congalvis, has been asked by the courts to come out with the alibi as soon as possible.
Stand to charge in count 2, murder in the first degree. Yes.
Brian Kohlberger's quadruple murder trial is scheduled to begin in less than 3 months. Will he provide an alibi at trial? Newly filed court documents reveal the answer. Welcome to Sidebar here on Law and Crime. I'm Anjanette Levy. Prosecutors in Brian Kohlberger's case want to know if he plans to present an alibi defense at trial. If he does, they say they have a right to know about it. Kohlberger faces the possibility of the death penalty if convicted of the murders of Maddie Mogan, Kaylee Gonsalves, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin in Moscow last November. According to the probable cause affidavit and other court documents, a K-bar knife sheath was found under Maddie Mogan's body on her bed, and testing revealed Kohlberger's DNA was on the sheath. Law enforcement used genetic genealogy to locate a possible suspect and came up with a child related to Michael Kohlberger. That's Brian's father. According to the probable cause affidavit, detectives believe the 4 students were murdered sometime between 4 a.m. and 4:25 a.m. The affidavit claims a white Hyundai Elantra was seen in the area of the King Road home beginning around 3:26 a.m. Around 4 a.m., investigators say Xana Kernodle received a DoorDash delivery. At 4:12, the affidavit says records show Xana was likely logged on to her TikTok account. The detective also wrote that Kohlberger's phone was not accessing cell towers for a 2-hour time period that morning when the homicides would have been committed. Kohlberger's defense attorneys have responded to prosecutors' demand that he tell them if he plans to use an alibi at trial. They write that the defense team is still investigating and preparing his case. Evidence corroborating Mr. Kohlberger being at a location other than the King Road address will be disclosed pursuant to discovery and evidentiary rules as well as statutory requirements. It is anticipated this evidence may be offered by way of cross-examination of witnesses produced by the state, as well as calling expert witnesses.
I find this to be very interesting, and I really do hope that there's a cross-examination of witnesses, because I personally have seen fishy things been going on from the start of this case. The first 6.5 weeks before Brian Kohlberger was arrested, there was other people of interest that everyone had in mind. We saw the grub truck video or the Twitch video, and we clearly saw that there was a lot of fishy things going around there. I personally believe that most of the people in the grub truck video were involved somehow or the other. If you go back to my previous clip, I stopped and showed y'all somebody with the t-shirt number 9 and the jeans pant who was putting something white in Maddie Mogeson's mouth. And that is a fact and not an allegation. There was a lot of fishy things going around there. John Showalter was walking with Kaylee Congalvis, may she rest in peace, and Maddie Mogan, may she rest in peace too. We noticed that he did not buy any food at all. Although these people were ruled out, my question is, were they ruled out too early? I am not saying that Brian Kohlberger is not involved in this crime. I personally believe that he is. But I do not believe that it's only Brian Koberger is involved. I believe there were other players in this incident, in this horrific murders. My red flags are clearly that it took 8 hours for the surviving roommates to call law enforcement. Why would they do that? I'm a mental health counselor. I know about the flight, fight, freeze mode. I know and I've studied what trauma can do, shock can do in a situation like that. And I do believe that the surviving roommates are witness. The reason I say that they're witness is because clearly Dylan Mortensen said she saw someone with bushy eyebrows with a mask. If you ask me, I can show you at least 10, 12 people from the college students who have bushy eyebrows. So that is not a clear direction pointing out to Brian Koberger. Just because he has bushy eyebrows doesn't necessarily make him the killer. The knife sheet that was found near Maddie Mogerson, may she rest in peace, was taken from the genealogical test. And I do believe in science. Definitely, as a mental health counselor, we have learned a lot about science and how the human mind works. So that is the one I'm in doubt of, because I know that that knife sheet belongs to Brian Koberger, his father. So that points out to Brian Koberger. I find that to be very interesting. That's the reason I believe he is involved. But the question is, did he do this by himself, or were there others involved? We've heard in the transcripts that there were 2 other male DNAs found there. It could have been from previous visits to the house. We know that it was a party house. We've heard rumors from the students in Idaho, Moscow, and from the Uber driver that drove the girls right before they were unlived. He said that drugs were sold in this house. He said that he drove many people to purchase drugs. And that is just to let you all know that is not a fact. That was what was told by the Uber driver that drove the girls home. Another red flag that doesn't sit right with me is that multiple people call law enforcement after 8 hours. Why wasn't 911 called before the multiple people came there to call law enforcement? They didn't even call law enforcement. They called 911 because allegedly one of the roommates was found unconscious. Now, we clearly heard from the coroner that this was a bloody scene. Trigger warning. This was a horrific killing. So how didn't the multiple people that called 911 didn't notice that the unconscious victim had knife wounds on her or him? How come they didn't notice the bloody scene in the house? Because let's not forget, the first police officer, one of the first police officers who entered the scene, said that the place reeked of blood. The smell of blood caught him at once. Now, we're not talking about one victim, we're talking about 8 victims. And like the coroner said, which is a fact, that it was a bloody scene. Who are the multi people that called 911? We heard the police chief saying early on in this case that will come out in the trial. With all these questionable things that we see in front of our eyes, imagine what Brian Christopher Kohlberger, his defense attorney, is thinking and what she has. Let's not forget that Ann Taylor subpoenaed Enan Harsh, the neighbor, when Brian Kohlberger got arrested. He said he went to court and they weren't interested in having him as a witness or as a suspect. He said that Ann Kohlberger or the court told him that he's off the hook. We know clearly that that is not a sentence used lightly. You're off the hook. So was he on the hook? Was he on the red flag list? I'm sure that this is going to be a very interesting trial because I personally believe that there are other people involved. I've heard some people saying that this is a cover-up by the police. I absolutely do not believe that this is a cover-up by the police. But I believe that the job wasn't well done by law enforcement at the start. With all due respect, I know that a lot of resources, research, money was put into this case. But the reason I believe that this case wasn't conducted rightly at the start is because I believe that Idaho, Moscow is a small state, peaceful state, that has never seen a quadruple murder or such a murder in many years, if never, actually. So I believe that the shock of what happened contributed to a lot of misinformation, and I believe the real suspects got away early on in this case. Let's not forget that when these murders happened, may they rest in peace, the 4 victims, it was a mayhem. All the students went early home for Thanksgiving. Now, how do we not know the people who were involved did not go home either? How do we know that the Hyundai Elantra that the police have is the right one? The description the police put out earlier on was that it was a later model than the description they gave. So that is a doubt too. While this major incident happened, let's not forget, another major incident happened on the 15th of December, the same day that Brian Christopher Kohlberger was pulled up with his father by the traffic police. He was pulled up twice. We heard clearly the father mentioning that there was a major incident with the SWAT team in Washington Pullman. Now that we know, that major incident was Brent Koperker. He held two women hostage. The two women was saved, you can say, by the SWAT team and the law enforcement. But Brent Koperger refused to give up the fight with the SWAT team. This is a Purple Heart soldier, may he rest in peace. He's very trained, skilled, been in wars. And my question is, why would Brian Koberger's father mention that incident? Was there any connection between the two BKs, Brian Koberger and Brent Koperker? Could Brent Koperker allegedly have been involved? Because I can clearly study his behavior pattern. The law enforcement said in Brent Koperker's case that they had to shoot him down because he refused to comply and he was a danger to the public. So we had two major incidents, 4 students brutally slain to death, and then we had Brent Koberger's incident. Could they be possibly related? It's just a question. I'm not accusing anyone. We are allowed to ask questions because those questions will come by Ann Taylor. Who was the other 2 male DNA found in the scene? And before the multiple people called 911, could they have maneuvered things around, maneuvered the bodies around, hidden weapons? Brian Koperker was killed on the 15th of December, like we know. But what was his whereabouts? What was his timeline on the 13th of November? His file is sealed. I'm sure it's sealed for a purpose. You can imagine if a SWAT team has to come down and take down someone that is a threat and danger to society. That man, may he rest in peace, just lived 7 minutes away from Brian Koberger. And he lived around 6 minutes away from the Idaho Moscow house in Kings Road. So I find that to be interesting. It could be possible that Brent Koperker had nothing to do with this and he was just suffering of his own PTSD and this incident took place. But there is chances of Brent Koperker knowing Brian Christopher Koberger. Could they have allegedly met through their survey, the research survey, that Brian Christopher Koberger was searching for participants in the Reddit? There was a diamond footprints, shoe footprints found in the crime scene. Who did that belong to? My question still remains. What did Maddie tell Adam? She said to Kaylee, I told Adam like everything. What is everything? Did Adam tell somebody else of what Maddie told him? Why did the guy number 9 put something that looked like drugs into Maddie's mouth? Kaylee didn't like it. Kaylee was distracted when that happened. The other girls from the Alpha Phi distracted and pulled her up to her side while they were talking to her. This happened. I personally believe that the guy Joe with the cap, the large guy, should be questioned more. He said that he did not know Joe Showalter. Do you remember that in the beginning? Now take a look at the Twitch clip, the whole of it. Sit and watch it carefully, and you tell me if that Joe guy did not know John Showalter and all of the people in the group video. He was conversating with him like somebody he knew. The Joe DeVito guy had the can of his Coca-Cola behind his hands, and he was giving a sign with the can and his thumb. That is there, and that is facts. That's not a speculation. We missed a lot from this case. That is the reason I'm going to this case from the beginning. I want to know who else could have been possibly involved. Was Brian Koberger involved? Or is it possible what his attorney is saying, that things were planted? Which I don't buy, honestly. But what if somebody borrowed Brian Koberger's car that day? I guess we'll have to wait and see in court what Brian Koberger's team has to present. It just takes one jury to be in doubt for the whole case to be redone. Maybe I would have been the jury who was in doubt, but I believe this may make many other juries in doubt. This crime was committed in a couple of minutes, which I find to be very concerning. The only way I could believe that this crime was committed in such a short period is if there were more people involved. Example, someone went upstairs for the two girls and someone went downstairs for Xana and Ethan. Or could it have been someone who had a lot of skills, experience, had the training of an assassin, like Brent Kopaker, allegedly. I'm not accusing him of committing any crime, but his behavior is questionable. He had two of his roommates